All right, here's some video support for part 3 of the transportation revolution. In this section of the notes, we're looking through the 3 major transport forms associated with the transport revolution. In this segment, let's look at canals. I want to emphasize one way of thinking about it is to say there's 3 main types, like it says here in the notes. But in some ways, you really just want to think of 2 types of canals. Both the Erie Canal and the canals the other eastern cities built were what we call trunk line canals or main lines. Those were to provide transportation from some remote area, like across the Appalachians, into the east. And the point to understand is that there were also feeder canals. These Midwestern canals should be understood as feeder canals. And the point to understand really is that the Erie Canal was uniquely successful, and that a bunch of other cities, notice Boston, Philly, Baltimore, Richmond, tried to also have their own Erie canals, but it was basically a waste because the Erie did the job of connecting the East Coast to the Trans-Appalachian West, and therefore the other efforts were just silly. In contrast, the Midwestern canals in Illinois and Indiana and Ohio mostly, to some extent those are simply tapping into the Mississippi, but some also into the Great Lakes. And the point is that these give you like a web-like system of good transportation for the farmers of the Midwest. But as noted here, canals were pretty minor in the South because rivers carry the cotton, and the key, as we learned about already, is that it was the steamboats up and down the Mississippi River that were crucial for the Southern transportation revolution. Now, canal-wise, the point you might be interested in is this guy, Roger Ransom, 1964, arguing that 3/4 of the canal building was unsuccessful. The point to understand here simply is that evaluating the success of a canal really depends upon your timing perspective. When a canal is built early in the period, like the 1820s or 1830s or even the 1840s, you're saying that's a good canal because it's going to contribute to the transportation revolution. Once we get into the 1840s and especially the 1850s, railroads are around. And once the railroads are around, then canals are no longer a good idea. So when you evaluate a canal issue, do you evaluate them ex ante, looking forward from the time that they were constructed and saying, was that a good idea? In 1830, they didn't know the railroad revolution was coming, and so it made sense. By the time we get to the 1850s, if people are expanding canals, we're saying, dude, that's not a good idea. The railroads are going to replace the canals. You know that by now. It's kind of like the way in the late 1900s, early 20th century, early 1900s, continued expansion of the rail network wouldn't make sense because interstate trucking has arisen. And yeah, that's the ex ante, ex post distinction when it comes to evaluating canals. To understand the evaluation of canals, you really have to go back to our transport demand model and make sure you understand that the success of canals or other transport ventures is not to be estimated based on how much money those make as business operations. We have to pay attention to the increased land values in the areas served by the canals or any other transport. The increase in land values and increased land use is really where the value of the transportation projects is found. Okay, that's it. Questions about this should be directed to the piazza. Good health and good day.